The month of May means the legislative session is over and the majority party is taking a victory lap. The chairman of the Duval County delegation will join us, offering his perspective on so many changes enacted by the House and Senate this year. Citywide elections will take place this week. We're talking about voting with the Supervisor of Elections and Mike Hogan's final election leading the office. And before City Council changes this summer, this longtime lawmaker in Jacksonville talks about what's happening before voters name a new mayor on This Week in Jacksonville. Thanks for joining us today. Yeah, lots happening in Northeast Florida, and we're going to start in Jacksonville. Joining us right now, City Council member Matt Carlucci. Councilman, welcome back. Thank you for saying yes. We're just a couple of days away now from this municipal election. Yes, property appraisers, every city council seats. The top of the ballot is that mayor's race.
Yes.
Help us understand your position, where you're at. You're a Republican. You have not endorsed the Republican candidate. Just walk us through where you're at in this race.
Well, I have endorsed Donna Duggan. I don't believe partisanship plays a role in local government, so I just blocked that out. I endorsed Donna because she's going to bring, I think, a good change to Jacksonville. I mean, just look at her campaign. She's run a completely... I mean, she's changed the culture of running for office. I mean, it's been a completely clean campaign, no nasty ads, untruthful ads. She's gone to all the forums. She's all over Jacksonville. She's made herself available to the people. And that has been a refreshing change to me. And she has shown the ability to put a great team together in her campaign. And she surrounded herself with some really top-notch leaders in Jacksonville. I think she'll be able to put together a strong administration. And the one thing that I have got to say, because this is important to me, law enforcement, she is not going to defund the police, which she's been bombarded with that kind of advertising. Yeah. You know, she will fully fund the police, and she will put more police on the street so we can have community policing. And those two things are important to me. But she will also look at the preventative part of that entire equation of fighting crime.
Yeah, it's been interesting to hear some of the arguments back and forth. And well, the current sheriff supports one side. The former sheriff came out on in favor of her and what have you.
Yes.
So as we step forward into that, I thought this was interesting. So one of your colleagues, Randy DeFore, on City Council, also made a statement in favor of Donna Duggan this week. And a little bit to what you were saying. Here's what DeFore's statement said. The simple facts are these: how you run a campaign is reflective of how you will govern. If that's true, Daniel Davis's campaign has showed clearly who he is and who and what values will be guiding him in the future. I believe that 4, potentially 8 more years of that kind of thuggery, she said, shown in the campaign, will wreak havoc on our city. And before we go past that, no one can be safe or prosper on a city run with Chicago-style rules. The truth goes out the window. Worse, he and his handlers seek to divide us neighbor against neighbor. How do you feel about that statement? Is that going too far, or do you feel the same way?
Well, I've been on the opposite side of statements from Randy like that before. Randy speaks her mind. She's honest, and she's a great ally to me on the council. Yeah. and I just want honesty, and that's what she does. But I have to say that a lot of what she has to say is absolutely on target, and the last part, I forgot what it was that was put up there, but you know, she's made herself available to everybody.
You're talking about Donna Duggan.
Yeah, Donna Duggan. And she's run a truthful campaign. She's comfortable in her skin. And I also think she will be a thoughtful but also cheerful leader. And we could use a little cheerfulness in City Hall.
Well, let me ask about this. We're going to speak with Supervisor of Elections Mike Hogan later in our
Yes.
show. What would change the low turnout numbers? What would energize voters in a municipal election? Clearly, we've got a little different style in Duval County and consolidated government. This isn't an election also for governor or president or that kind of thing.
Well, what will energize turnout is trust in government, and that's something that needs to be regained. Trust is the most valuable asset any of us can have, particularly those of us in public service and politics. And once you lose that, you've lost everything. And I think once the next mayor is elected, whoever it is, and by the way, Daniel, he's been a friend of mine for a long time, and I gave him a call about my endorsement prior to endorsing Donna out of respect. But once people start to feel a part of their government again, once they start to feel like their voice matters, once they feel like they're engaged, the trust level goes up. That's what will bring more people to the polls. But I'll tell you what won't bring them to the polls is a constant barrage of negative, nasty mailers. And I hear that over and over and over again. And that has absolutely changed the view of a lot of Republicans that want to now support Donna Duggan because of the way she's run her campaign so clean.
Let's talk about some of the governing that's going on here. I know this week's Jacksonville City Council meeting, you guys approved 15-3 the settlement agreement with the city and the civil rights groups that had issued a lawsuit. This was about the redistricting maps. Both parties gone back and forth, I mean, almost a year. And here's some of what the claims were there, that the proposed maps cause racial gerrymandering, that the bill approved states that the city is going to continue using the P3 map. How do you feel about this? Is the city going to pay $100,000 in legal fees here? Does this restore faith in government like you were just talking about?
Well, I think that the P3 map, the plaintiff's map, I supported that from the beginning. The districts are more compact. They are more diverse. The districts distribute our demographics so that each district looks a little bit more like Jacksonville instead of safe Democratic districts and safe Republican districts. They mix up the demographics so that yes, sir, that will do more to help change our government than almost anything. I believe redistricting, the way it's been done on the local, state, and federal level over the years, has caused a lot of our problems in the lack of trust of government. Because if I'm in a safe seat and I don't have to worry about the Democrats or the Republicans, depending on which party I'm in, then I'm not representing the whole. But we have to have districts where council members, members of the House, whoever, have to suddenly look at a bigger picture of a more diverse district. And so our district should look like Jacksonville. And when that happens, we'll get better government. But if you're safe, I mean, I don't even bother looking to see how my Congress members and senators vote on the federal level in the paper, because I already know how they're going to vote. But if they were not in such safe districts, they would have to give a little more thought to their positioning.
Come closer to the center, I think.
They'd have to come closer to the people.
So last thing, we saw, this was kind of cool, we saw this week the One Stork ship. This ship comes into Jacksport. It's the biggest, largest cargo ship we've ever seen come into the port. And this goes back, Councilman, to deepening the port, right?
Yes.
How do you feel about this? This seems like a great opportunity for Jacksport and the region, really.
I have to tell you, it's the biggest pink ship I've ever seen in my life, okay? The thing is like 4 football fields long, and it can hold 14,000 containers. But I will say this, the port is a job driver in Jacksonville, and that's why I have supported the deepening of the harbor, because Jacksonville needs as many good paying jobs as we can get. And that's what the port does. It drives good jobs with benefits. And the more opportunities we have for our citizens to have jobs like that, you know, the better quality of life they have, and the better they'll feel about their city. The port is hugely important, but at the same time, deepening the port can have issues of resiliency and flooding. And so that's why we have to look at, you know, resilience solutions to mitigate, you know, the deepening of the port as well.
Councilman, I appreciate it. I know it goes very fast. There were like 3 other things I wanted to talk about. So next time, we're going to talk about more stuff.
Hey, it's great to see you.
Thank you so
Always
much.
a pleasure.
Councilman, thank you for being with us.
Yes, sir.
All right, so stay with us. We're taking a look at statewide legislation in the just completed session. Duval Delegation Chairman Wyman Duggan joins us next on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
And joining us in this segment, State Representative Wyman Duggan, also serving as the Duval Legislative Delegation Chairman this year. So the annual 60-day legislative session, it's just wrapped up here beginning of May. By my count, you had 28 appropriations requests that made their way into the budget, which goes into effect July 1st. That sounds like a pretty successful trip to Tallahassee for you and your Republican colleagues.
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. Yes, it's an honor to represent this area, and I feel a great obligation to try and bring statewide, state-level support to great, worthy opportunities here. And so we were very successful as a delegation, not just me, but my partners in that process, getting quite a bit of good support into the budget. Of course, now it goes to the governor. He has line item veto authority, so he'll be reviewing what the presiding officers, the Senate President and the Speaker, decided to put into the budget.
So for the Duval delegation, so 3 Democrats, 5 Republicans, we know on the statewide tally chart, there's more Republicans than Democrats. Were you able to, or was it a priority to say, hey, let's try and make this bipartisan, let's try and make this so that both parties feel like they're representing their people and getting things accomplished in this legislative session? Had to be hard to do if that's what you're trying to do.
Absolutely. Certainly in our Duval delegation, we have always had a very good working relationship across party lines, and that's historical, not just since I've been a member of it. So for, as an example, to get a project into the budget, it can be in on one chamber or the other's budget ask, but it's obviously better if it's in both chambers' draft budgets when they go to conference. So as an example, I worked very closely with Senator Tracy Davis on the what turned out to be the $75 million for the UF FinTech program here in town. So that was absolutely an example of working across party lines in that regard. She and I, in fact, had several appropriations that made it in working together.
So let's talk about that. I did want to bring that up. $75 million here, and this is part of City Council in Jacksonville said we're going to contribute. The university is going to contribute. The state is going to contribute. Tell me about this. This is the University of Florida Graduate School campus that is going to come to Jacksonville. Why is this important, do you think?
I think it's enormously, could be enormously transformative for urban downtown Jacksonville and for Jacksonville as a whole and for the region as a whole. It's really, a triple whammy. You've got the #1 public education institution in the country under the current, most recently released rankings, wanting to come here to Jacksonville, bring a graduate level program, offering degrees in areas that are 3 of our main economic drivers. You've got biomedical life sciences, you've got financial services and technology, and then of course higher ed. I mean, we've got already a great ecosystem of higher educational institutions here. Now you're bringing the #1 in the country right into our downtown. So they have told me that they anticipate once the school's fully up and running, and this will be multiple years out, but it could be as many as 2,000 people a day on that campus, students, professors, others, right in the heart of downtown. How great will that be? And then you've got a pipeline of talent coming out, and hopefully we'll be able to attract them here to River City.
Would be supported by business and the other organizations who are looking for that talent here in Northeast Florida. What are some of the other organizations or projects that are benefiting from these appropriations requests?
So some that I feel particularly pleased made it into the budget. One is $5 million for Wilson's Children's Hospital for pediatric mental health needs. I think we all know about the tremendous impact to pediatric mental health as a result of the pandemic.
That doesn't sound like a Republican or a Democratic issue.
That is absolutely
either,
not.
Right?
Absolutely not.
It's something all of us are going to support.
And Wilson is really the only option between basically Tampa, Orlando, and Savannah. So it's not just Jacksonville. It's all of these, South Georgia, west the Panhandle. They can come here. They're creating new beds, new funding, new resources. Also got $850,000 for a pilot program that DCPS is going to put together to introduce career and technical education into elementary school to start the familiarization and facilitation of those opportunities, which obviously are great high-paying jobs in their own right at the elementary school level.
Why not start early?
Exactly right. Exactly right. I mean, that is a pipeline of people who are already in Jacksonville, right? Why would we not want to educate them, give them the skills and tools they need to stay here? Then we also, I got $1 million for a program called Here Tomorrow. It's a suicide prevention hotline, 24/7, peer-to-peer counseling, puts them in touch with the next day with mental health resource and counseling. And, just things along those lines that I feel very good about.
So we got about a minute left, so we can't go too deep, but broadly speaking, lots of change came through the legislature in terms of some education stuff. This last week, Governor DeSantis signing a lot of those things. There's pushback already, including the teachers union saying, hey, we feel like we were targeted because of the changes to unions and contributions, automatic deductions or for fees, that kind of thing. What would you say to those educators who are saying, hey, is this good for me or is this bad for me?
I would say it really is good for you. We're not making you leave your union. If you like your union, you can stay in your union. We're not requiring the union to start over. All we're saying is that you should voluntarily be able to make the decision whether you want to financially support the union and not be required to have it automatically deducted from your paycheck.
The voluntary part is what you're really getting at. So
right.
that
the
educators, whoever that employee is, doesn't feel like they're forced into it. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely right. I mean, there can be kind of a social coercion component to that an aspect of paycheck, dues deduction. And so this gives them guardrails and protection to say, this is my choice, this is my decision. Most of the time, the union's going to protect them anyway. I mean, they will represent in collective bargaining situations members or employees who aren't in the union, so they're still going to be able to get the benefit of the union protection.
And it would be hard for some of those educators to say, I don't want the increased investment in teacher salaries and everything that is also on our website we've talked about. But I appreciate the time. Wyman Duggan, thank you so much, State Representative and the leader of the Duval delegation. Thanks.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
All right, so stay with us. We're almost there for Election Day in Duval County. Supervisor of Elections Mike Hogan joins us after a short break, so stay with us on This Week in Jacksonville. And if you're only joining me Sundays for This Week in Jacksonville, you're missing out. Subscribe to my weekly newsletter for This Week in Jacksonville. It's a real bonus, especially for News4Jax insiders. You just head to news4jax.com/newsletters and then click to sign up under This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville on Channel 4.
And joining us right now, Duval County Supervisor of Elections Mike Hogan is with us. So, Mr. Hogan, you told us how disappointed you were with the turnout in March, 25%. How do you feel about the increase in voter participation, at least that you're projecting for this election here in May?
Well, of course, our projection is 37%, Ken. I'm hoping we're going to get there. There was a big uptick in the first 2 days of early voting that really surprised us, and also in mail ballot voting. So right now, we're 27,000 votes ahead of where we were at the same time in March. Why? I think there are fewer people on the ballot, and it's not as confusing because there were a lot of new candidates in the March election. So we're hoping we'll get to that number, but I can't understand why people don't come out in droves when it comes time to selecting your mayor.
You've expressed that. I've seen those conversations you have with Jim Piggott, and you seem frustrated by it. Maybe explain that. Why would that be frustrating? And I think a lot of people probably share that, but maybe some don't.
Yeah, I think there's a combination of things that have caused it. But if you look at the numbers, and we dive deep into them, in 2015, the mayor was elected with less than 20% of the voters of Duval County. That's all he got. Folks, this is your hometown. This is where you live. This is where taxes might be raised or not, and where people can congregate in great recreational facilities. And if you want that, and that's what I heard when I was a councilman, then you've got to participate in voting.
So you've served as supervisor of elections since 2015. So you've been through it's an unusual system, unusual timing of these municipal votes in the River City. From your perspective, and by the way, went through this as one of the runoff candidates back in 2011 also. So you've experienced this in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
How does this compare, what's going on in these races now, to when you were a candidate?
The biggest two things are the money.
A lot more being spent on it, right?
Oh, my goodness, yeah. And the attitude. I do not like the hate mail that I'm seeing in my mailbox. You need to talk about yourself. If you're running as for an office, you need to talk about what you're going to do, what my history is. I really don't like attack ads, and I think And I know because of phone calls and emails, the public doesn't like it either. And that's had an impact on turnout.
Because of the negativity, you think that
Yes.
gets people to say, forget it, I
Yeah.
don't even want to participate?
It's all nasty. That's what I've heard many, many times in the last few weeks.
Just briefly, we got about a minute left on this topic. Do you think Jacksonville should change its system because of consolidated government? We do these votes for citywide elections in an off year, an uneven year, an odd year.
Yeah, we're unusual to the rest of the state. Two big reasons. Number one, it'll save the taxpayers about $2.5 to $3 million if we moved the city elections to either the governor's cycle or the president's cycle. The other thing is that we will have definitely a larger turnout, and that's my big kick. We'll see 60, 70, 80% people showing up, and I like those numbers, and especially for our city.
Yeah. What would it take to do that? Would there have to be some constitutional
It would have to be a
changes
charter
within the
change.
charter?
Yeah.
Okay.
The toughest thing is probably to get it through the council. It's been presented to the council several times, Charter Commission just a few years ago. But then they will have to compete with other folks trying to get money and donations and contributions for their campaign, and that's been the rub.
And so here we come. We're up against the election on Tuesday night. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate having you with us
Thank
today.
you, Kent, always.
And next time on our show, we're looking at results of the election. Chris Hand joins us for our monthly Hand on Government segment. This Week in Jacksonville airs each Sunday morning this time. I'm Kent Justice. Thanks for watching on air on Channel 4, the CW17, and online at news4jax.com. Also streaming on News 4 Jax Plus.
See why every day more people are choosing News 4 Jax, Northeast Florida and South Georgia's #1 source for local news.